Hello and welcome to Holy Mary's Blessing, the ministry podcast of True Parents Way. I'm Tyler Hendricks. And I'm so glad that you could join me this week. And I want to begin with words from our True Father's prayers. I read the Chansangyang prayers every day. And these words I found extremely meaningful over the last couple of days. True Father prayed, "Beloved Heavenly Father, even in my dreams I was not aware that the sorrowful path of restoration was to be filled with so many trials and difficulties. You called an immature and uninformed young man who now stands before you today, reflecting on the hardships and struggles that you placed before me. I have come to understand that they were all expressions of your love." That was from a prayer Father uttered in 1980. And in the next year, just 2 months later, January 1st of 1981, True Father prayed like this. "Loving Heavenly Father, throughout the many different historical courses, so many sorrowful days have passed in succession. During this period of 60 years from the 1920s, you sent this unworthy child to this earth and raised and educated me. I was under your protection and guidance until I became mature, and you let me understand the new view of history and my mission. I remember once again how, after I came to know you and Jesus, and to realize this, there could have been a day in your history when you were welcomed and received glory. But because Christianity and the Korean people did not fulfill their responsibility, a history of sadness has been woven instead." My topic today is absolute faith in marriage. So why do I start with these prayers? 2 points. One is that True Father referred to himself in both these prayers as being immature, being unprepared, being uninformed, and that it was a gradual process through which God informed him and Jesus informed him of what his mission was. And secondly, that Father is going through, or from the late 1940s, he was going through a secondary course. That if Christianity in Korea had recognized who he was and recognized the divine principle, and if the Korean people and government had recognized him, his life would have been so different. And yet, it was not to be. And did Father ever complain? No. Did God, in a sense, pull the rug out from under his feet? And Father knew that God himself was suffering much more than True Father. That 2,000 years of Christian preparation, Satan took it because of the failures of a few individuals and a few organizations surrounding the birth and the maturation and the emergence of a young man named Sun Myung-moon. And the artistic suffering is that you can't blame them. They were no worse than we are. By God's grace, we recognized the Messiah. We recognized true parents. It was not flesh and blood that revealed this to us, but those people sadly did not. And yet Father just went forward without changing. And that's the absolute faith. That's the absolute faith we need in marriage. You're listening to Holy Mary's Blessing, the podcast ministry of True Parents Way. So we get into, as a prelude to talking about absolute faith in marriage, that Father went a very complicated course, and a course that did not have to be, you could say, didn't have to be, although after it took place, we could say it was predestined, just like the cross. The cross did not have to be, and yet after it took place, Christianity for 2,000 years said it was predestined. 2 quotes from True Father, or one from True Father, one from the Bible. You cannot hold onto any particular expectation about how your life should go. And another quote from Father, never in my entire life have I insisted on my own way. And from the Bible, the prophet Jeremiah, Lord, I know that people's lives are not their own. It is not for them to direct their steps. Obviously, we need to have that absolute faith that God is working with us, that God has a plan, that God is overseeing and striving for us on our behalf for great success. And yet, the responsibility is our own. Knowing God is in charge, God has a plan, the responsibility is our own. And this is no other place more true than in marriage. You make a plan. I'm going to love this man, this woman, my spouse for the rest of my life. And somehow how things may not go the way you want. And that's why in the marriage vows, in the Christian marriage vows, in the English language at least, in the English Anglo culture and American culture, we have the expression for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health. That means I vow my life to you. If things go well, if things don't go well, I vow my life to you. If we get richer, if we get poorer, I vow my life to you. If we're both totally healthy, if we're both, ill, unhealthy, sick, then still I vow my life to you. I have absolute faith in you, and I have absolute faith in God. And it connects exactly to absolute obedience to God, to the way that God would have us go, and absolute love. It's the expression of absolute love. Now, let's think about True Father's strategy in this, in order to apply this teaching, including absolute faith in marriage. He said, my life has been like living in prison, or even more difficult. That was True Father's expression about his own life. I want to shift the perspective to True Mother's life. She was blessed in marriage, lifted up to be as if she were the queen of the universe. And yet she went into a prison life. She lived with a disciple's family for 3 years. She had to come into the church through the back door and lived a very difficult life, being in a prison and doing nothing but having children. Of course, she wasn't just doing nothing. She was the figurehead. She was the officiator with True Father of blessings and holy days, with True Father day and night, and plus having children. People say, people want to be with Father all the time. I want to be with Father, but then after 3 days, I want to leave. True Mother could not leave. She's with Father all the time, plus having children. So how do you win this victory? True Father said, just accept it. You're living in prison. He said, don't strive to reach the top of the world, but rather to remain in the shadow of suffering. That is the safety zone. Since Satan is arrogant, he despises difficult places. So our safety zone is found in the most miserable places. Hungnam prison. Father chose to sleep in the most miserable place, by the toilet. We have a testimony from Wanpil Kim from the very early days when True Mother was living at Changpadong, and yet True Father would have leaders' meetings in the bedroom, in their bedroom, in their room, in that small house, until the wee hours of the morning. And what could True Mother do? Wanpil Kim said sometimes she was pregnant, she couldn't stay, she couldn't be there, and she would go into the bathroom. And they sort of prepared a little place in the bathroom for True Mother to rest. This was, True Father slept by the toilet. True Mother rested in the bathroom. This is their parallel course, going the suffering way, with no, could mother complain? Not at all. Smiling. Look at every picture of true mother from that time on. Smiling, and true father, smiling, happy, lifting up the members, joyful, everything's good. She's going through incredible suffering in her heart. True father's words, it was heaven's love that I went through those paths full of ordeals, because they were the conditions by which I could claim everything from Satan. So he said, if you want to reach the topmost position in your nation, the shortcut is to go to prison and overcome that experience, whether that prison is a literal prison or it is a spiritual prison. It's MFT, it's witnessing all the time, it's 40-day conditions, it's prayer vigils, whatever it is. That's the shortcut to overcome that experience and keep smiling. Just keep smiling. You're listening to Holy Mary's Blessing, the podcast ministry of True Parents' Way. I'm Tyler Hendricks. We'll be right back. And the words I'm reading are from Jambunwagyang, Book 7, Chapter 3, Section 6, Father's reflections on his prison course. And very, very deep reflections. Let me continue. While I kept faith in God and loved him all my life, there were more than a few times when I felt like complaining to him. Sometimes when I was in a life-threatening situation, God acted as if he did not know anything about it. Why? Why would God abandon Father? Why would God abandon Jesus on the cross? Why would God abandon Mother? Why would Father abandon Mother? Father's answer: if God had intervened, then the person known as Mr. Moon of the Unification Church would not have been able to carry through his destined path, which he had to do on his own. So God had no choice but to stand by as if he were a third party. Do you think Mother went through that all the time? Do you go through that all the time? Do you think your spouse goes through that all the time? In the context of your marriage. I would imagine so, because that's what life is like in the providence of restoration, while we are still on this path, on the way to the realization of Chanel Gok. We get struck. We get struck and abandoned. Let me continue with Father's words. God's strategy is to be struck first and take back what was lost. In God's ideal of creation, there is no such thing as striking. God does not strike us. God will never strike us. But he does put us or leave us in a position for Satan to strike us. This is like Jacob wrestling with the angel that was sent by God. This is like Moses being attacked by the angel of death sent by God, and Zipporah saving him. Divine principle explains that we deal with life and death struggles under God's dominion. In other words, that God allows this to happen so that we do not have to do it under Satan's dominion. God seems to want to kill us. But if we cling to God anyway, the God who tells us we are worthless, or breaks all of his promises of glory, or inflicts us with pain or suffering, we will not die. The angel could not kill Jacob. The angel actually could not kill Moses, but it was because Jacob hung on and would not let go. It was because Zipporah intervened and circumcised their son Gershom, which was an incredible restitution for that whole family, for Moses' position that was absolutely necessary. So under God's dominion, we will not die. But Satan, when he drives us to ruin and denounces us, will really will kill us. The other reason for Father's occasional harsh words to true mother, or to any of us actually, was that all members deserved to be punished. But we could not take it, so Mother took it on our behalf. This is exactly like Jesus on the cross, receiving punishment on our behalf. It's called vicarious atonement. Father did the same in Hungnam and his entire life with 6 or 7 deaths and resurrections. He didn't have to die. He shouldn't. He had done nothing to deserve persecution and attacks. It's because of us, because of the sins of the human race. And true mother took on the same burdens, the same attacks, the same forsakenness. And this is the reason for Father's occasional harsh words to true mother, because he couldn't say it to the children. He couldn't say it to us. He couldn't say it to the true children. They would just recoil or retract or pull back or react or retaliate. Or it would just break our spirits. I know that. Father never said a harsh word to me in my life because he knows I would wilt. I would just wilt like a flower in a desert. So you have to be strong to receive that which we deserve, not because of what necessarily we did, but because of the position that we are in, to pay the indemnity. And instead of Satan striking us and really killing us, God will strike us. We take it, we persevere, we remain grateful. I remember one experience when the first of the Korean IWs, a Korean elder, came to the center where I was living as a graduate student, Nashville, Tennessee. And he arrived, and I was pretty much the only person there. He sat me down and started just berating me and denouncing me and criticizing me and accusing me and all kinds of bad stuff because I hadn't witnessed and I hadn't brought any professors, I hadn't transformed my school, I hadn't, saved the campus. And of course it was all true. And of course my fallen nature was reacting, but I didn't say a word. I just nodded and just smiled and just received it. I just received it because I felt like this is good for me. And then as soon as the blistering tirade was over, he looked at his watch and he said, "Okay, let's do a little tour of Nashville. Let's go get something to eat." And it was all peaches and cream. This is God's way. So you may receive harsh words from your spouse. It may be God speaking to you through your spouse to teach you something. Just smile. Just be grateful. Because it's like a knife going through water. In 10 minutes, in a half an hour, in an hour, in a day, everything's fine. Everything is intimate. Everything is warm. That's the way of God. Because we have this protection of true parents over us. If it were Satan's world, we'd be crushed, there'd be conflict, there'd be retaliation, it'd get worse and worse and worse. But in God's world and God's principle, we receive it. We have absolute faith in God, absolute faith in the restorative power of the principle, that God is in charge, and that if we follow God's way with true love, God will claim everything, and we'll be resurrected, and our marriage will be resurrected. So keep this in mind, absolute faith in marriage. Between father and mother, absolute faith in marriage. Do you think that marriage wasn't like your marriage that hits the rocks sometimes, that smashes against the breakers? I think so. Absolute faith, absolute love, and absolute obedience. You're listening to Holy Marriage Blessing, the podcast ministry of True Parents Way. And I'll close with more words from True Father and from Jesus. In the midst of pain and loneliness, I sometimes felt, Heavenly Father, you are so cold-hearted. You are so merciless. You only give me responsibility, but you don't take care of me. End of quote. Does that sound like you and me sometimes? Hey, I've got all these responsibilities, but no resources. You're not taking care of me. You're just abandoning me. This was so typical in my course, especially as at headquarters and over the years. So close to Father, and yet this kind of experience. Okay, back to Father's words. You don't take care of me. But as soon as I said that to myself, God said to me, look, I was right there with you when you held the hand of that beggar. In the midst of your misery, when you were shedding tears with those sorrowful people, I was with you there. End of quote. Okay, it means go out. When God is abandoning you, hold the hand of a beggar. Shed tears with the sorrowful people. That's what Father said he was doing. And that's where Heavenly Father said, I was with you. Back to Father's words. So how can I not but continue on this path? Now we can understand why Jesus said, I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I was naked and you gave me clothing. I was sick and you took care of me. This was Jesus talking about himself. It means the Messiah comes to you hungry and you give him or her food. The Messiah comes to you thirsty and you give something to drink. The Messiah comes to you as a stranger. You don't recognize them. Where are they from? Who is that person? And you welcome them. The Messiah comes to you naked and you clothe them. The Messiah comes to you sick and you take care of them. That's the heart of Jesus. That's where we meet God. That's where we meet our spouse. In sickness or in health. Okay, so sickness. Take care of that person. Richer or poorer. Maybe you'll become poor because of that. The vows, the marriage, the blessing trumps everything, is above everything because it's eternal. The sickness is not eternal. The poverty is not eternal. The better or worse, the worse is not eternal. The marriage is eternal. The love is eternal. That's what you capture. That's what you find when you're in that sick, forlorn, impoverished, naked, hungry state. That's where you find God. That's where you find what is eternal, because Satan does not go there. The children of God go there. Absolute faith in marriage. You've been listening to Holy Marriage Blessing, the podcast ministry of True Parents Way. Our music is by Ronan Hardiman. I'm Tyler Hendricks. Love God, love your neighbor, and don't give up. We'll talk to you again next week.